Exodus 21. Now, these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them. If thou buy an Hebrew servant, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master have given him a wife, and she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's. What? And he shall go out by himself. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go free, then his master shall bring him unto the judges. He shall also bring him to the door, and unto the door post, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. And if the man sells his daughter to be a maidservant, she shall not go out as the maidservants do. If she pleases not her master, who hath betrothed her to himself, then shall he let her be redeemed to flee with her. And if he have betrothed her unto his son, he shall deal with her after the manner of daughters. If he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. And if he do not these 3 unto her, then she shall go out free without money. He has smiteth a man so that he die, shall be surely put. He that smiteth a man so that he die shall surely be put to death. And if a man lie not in wait, but God deliver him into his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. But if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from mine altar, that he may die. And he that smiteth his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. And he that stealeth a man and stealeth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. And he that curseth the father or his mother shall surely be put to death. And if men strive together, and one smite another with a stone or with his fist, and he not die, but keepeth his bed, if he rise again and walk abroad upon his staff, then shall he that smote him be quit. Only he shall pay for the loss of his time, and shall cause him to be thoroughly healed. And if a man smite his servant or his maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall surely be punished. Notwithstanding, if he continued a day or 2, he shall not be punished, for he is his money. If men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follow, he shall surely be punished, according as the woman's husband will lay upon him. And he shall pay as the judge determines. And if any mischief follow, then thou shalt give a life for a life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. And if a man smite the eye of his servant, or the eye of his maid, that it perish, he shall let him go free for his eye's sake. And if he smite out his manservant's tooth, or his maidservant's tooth, he shall let him go free for his tooth's sake. For if an ox gore a man or a woman, that they die, then the ox shall surely be stoned, and his flesh shall not be eaten. But the owner of the ox shall be quit. And if the ox were wont to push his thorn in past time, and it hath been testified to his owner, and hath not kept him in, but that he hath killed a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, but his owner shall be put to death. If there be laid on him a sum of money, then he shall give for the ransom of his life whatsoever is laid upon him. Whether he have gored a son or have gored a daughter, according to his judgment shall it be done unto him. If the ox shall push a manservant or a maidservant, he shall give unto their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. What? If an ox shall push a manservant, he should be stoned? If a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover it, and an ox or an ass fall therein, the owner of the pit shall make it good, and give money unto the owner of them, and the dead beast shall be his. And if one man's ox hurts another, that he may die, then they shall sell the live ox and divide the money of it. And the dead ox also they shall divide. Or if it be known that the ox hath used to push in time past, and his owner hath not keep him in, he shall surely pay ox for ox, and the dead shall be his own. What? So this is called the mishpatim, the Hebrew word for judgments or ordinances. In Exodus 21, the narrative transitions directly from the high-level moral ideals of the Ten Commandments into a gritty, practical civil code. Moses is still in the thick darkness of Mount Sinai, and God begins to lay down the case laws that the local elders will use to run daily courtroom justice within the camp. What? So this is when they develop the camp, and the Ark of the Covenant is produced later on. I don't know. I haven't read this, so I'm just trying to piece together what I currently know. But that's crazy that God was like developing all of this, worried about like when ox were pushing people. I don't even know. Let's get some more context. This chapter can feel incredibly jarring because it dives straight into topics like servitude, physical assaults, and animal negligence. But when you look at the ancient historical context, these laws were actually a radical, humanizing leap forward that protected the vulnerable and curbed the unchecked violence in the ancient world. The very first civil law God gives in a newly freed nation of slaves is paradoxically a law regulating servitude. The historical context. It's critical to distinguish in an ancient Near Eastern servitude from It is critical to distinguish ancient Near Eastern servitude from the horrific chattel slavery in modern history. In the ancient desert, there were no bankruptcy courts, welfare checks, or banking systems. If a man fell into extreme poverty, experienced a catastrophic crop failure, or stole property he couldn't pay back, he would legally sell his own labor to another neighbor for a fixed window to clear his debts. It was a debt-free relief system and survival mechanism. God established a strict, non-negotiable boundary line to ensure this never turned into a permanent oppression. A Hebrew servant could only labor for 6 years. On the 7th year, he was legally mandated to walk away completely free without paying a single penny of debt. However, if a servant grew to deeply love his master, his wife, and his children, and explicitly refused to leave on the 7th year, the law provided a highly symbolic ritual to alter his legal status. The public declaration. Year 7, the servant must publicly state before his community, I love my master, my wife, my children. I will not go free. At the court, the master must bring the servant before the local judges to verify that his chronicle is completely voluntary and free of coercion. The boundary line. The master leads the servant to the front door or doorpost of the master's house, the legal boundary line of the home. The permanent seal. The master takes an awl, a sharp metal puncturing tool, and bores it clean through the servant's earlobe into the wood of the door. This piercing was a permanent physical scar that broadcasts to the entire community that this man was no longer a forcible debtor. He is a voluntary bond slave, bound by love and absolute devotion to his master forever. The text moves into criminal law, drawing a sophisticated legal line between premeditated murder and accidental manslaughter. If a man intentionally ambushes and kills his neighbor, he faces a mandatory death sentence. Even if the killer sprints to God's holy worship altar to grab onto its stone horns for sanctuary, even if a killer sprints to God's holy worship altar to grab onto its stone horns for sanctuary, the police are ordered to rip him away from the altar and execute him. If a death is completely accidental, God promises to appoint a place whither he shall flee, setting up future cities of refuge where a person could safely live protected from retaliatory blood feuds. The death penalty for human trafficking in verse 16, the law drops a massive hammer on kidnapping. And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. This single verse completely dismantles any biblical justification for historical chattel slavery. Under the law of Sinai, the forced kidnapping and trafficking of a human being was a capital crime. Wow. Verse 23 through 25. The lex talionis. Verse 23 through 25 drops a famous legal formula. Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Modern cultures view an eye for an eye as an excuse for brutal medieval vengeance. In the ancient world, it was the exact opposite. It was a law of strict restraint. In those days, if a man accidentally knocked out a nobleman's tooth in a street fight, the noble tribal clan would march over and slaughter the man's entire village in vengeance. God steps in and says, no punishment must strictly fit the crime. No, the punishment must strictly fit the crime. It restricts judges from over-punishing. It completely outlawed personal blood feuds. Furthermore, archaeological records show that in standard Hebrew practice, this was almost always executed as a financial scale for civil damages, calculating the exact monetary value of a lost eye or tooth and forcing the offender to pay the victim for the lost wages and medical care. The chapter wraps up with gritty, everyday agricultural liability cases. The prime example used is a goring ox. If an ox snaps and kills a human for the very first time, the owner is not liable, but the animal must be stoned to death and its meat thrown out. If an ox has a documented history of aggression, the local community had officially warned the owner neglectfully failed to lock it up. If that ox kills someone, the owner is charged with criminal neglect and faces the death penalty or a massive life-altering financial ransom payout. Unlike the surrounding contemporary laws, like the famous Code of Hammurabi, which placed property value above human life, the laws of Exodus repeatedly broadcast that human beings carrying the divine image carry an unmeasurable worth that outrank livestock, money, or social status.